So this is day 7 of the 10-day NZ classes, and this video is devoted to the activities listed over here. So it's going to be another 3-hour session, and as you can see, we shall start the session with some listening and reading guided drill. This is the 4th guided drill, by the way, so we designed these lectures so that on the second mock tests, which is going to be on day 9, that's going to be, I believe, on Sunday, is that they'll be able to reacquaint themselves again with the basic rules on all the 4 components. And so our job here is to be able to orientate them on, again, the rules, at the same time apply them through some drills. So as you can see here in the listening, this isn't going to be the typical listening activity, and that's because we would like them to be introduced to some online activity, and this is by way of this website called Blinkist. You might want to research about this yourself and see what the website is like, but basically what Blinkist is a site that provides a digestible summary of some popular non-fiction literature. And the nice thing about this site is that it provides a transcript of all the audio summaries of the books, and these summaries run for only about 15 to 20 minutes. And so I always recommend this site to my students here in the Philippines, because it'll not only introduce them to some ideas that they might be able to use both for writing and speaking, but also introduce them to some nice words and phrases and manners of expressing ideas that they might learn from simply reading the transcript of the audio version. So over here is an example of how one chapter is transcribed. So the example you would like to share with them is a summary of, or a part of the summary of, a book entitled The Managed Heart, and this is by Arlie Russell Hochschild. Now, the activity is fairly simple, actually. What I did here is I got the transcription, or the transcript, I mean, of the first blink of this particular audio, and I just removed some words here, and so their goal is to just fill in those missing items using the words that they hear in the audio. Now, what you can do is preview this first with all of them and guide them on what kinds of words they expect in each of the items here from 1 to 8. So you might want to read the sentences or the phrases just before the blank spaces if you want. So that's how it's gonna be like. Now, as a prelude, however, to the listening activity, you might also want to ask them, before handing over this handout, this paper over here, what they know about emotional labor. So if you wish, you can write the words emotional labor on the board, and you have like a warm-up discussion and ask them what they think about the phrase, and then some ideas will come in. Just affirm them, and then segue from there to this handout and let them know that today they'll be learning something about emotional labor. All right, so you do that. Now, once you've done the previewing of the 8 items here, you proceed to playing the audio. The audio, by the way, is in a folder that is part of the day 7 materials, together with the PDF copy of this sheet over here. And the second page of this sheet contains the answer key. So this is the teacher's copy. Okay, so this is for your own reference, and you might want to study also, listen also to the audio, so you can confirm this yourself. All right. Now, after the 8-item drill here, you might want to proceed to some comprehension questions. That's over here, and this is like a jumping board to your reading activity. And if you notice, down below are some comprehension questions using true, false, or not given. Now, again, you let them know the rules that they have to follow as regards true, false, not given. As regards the manner of reading, they have to skim, which means they have to use some keywords over here and look for them in the text at the top, and then they expect that the answers to these 7 items, just like in a regular reading test, will always be sequential from top to bottom. Now for this particular drill, you give them about 8 minutes maximum, and then afterwards you answer. So here's the key. You might want to try answering this also yourself, so you have some basis in explaining some of the answers if students have a different answer from the ones we have over here. Okay, now encourage them after this activity, encourage them to check out the website itself, blinkist.com. It also has an app version which they can download on their phones. It's available both on the iOS, the App Store, and the Play Store for the Android platform. It's for free. Emphasize it to them, and that encourage them to make use of the audios there, say when they commute to and from work, and when they're just free, they can download as many books as they can. I think there's like a trial period for about 7 days in which they can download as many books as they can or as they wish and listen to them whenever they want. So that's the first part. This part should last for about 20 minutes maximum, and afterwards you move on to some reading activity. All right, so this next part is going to be all about reading. Now for the reading part, direct the class to the final input portion of their course book, and excuse me, this can be found after that separator. There's this green or red colored sheet right after page 80 of the first part of their book, and they should find the label final input somewhere there in the first page. And this is actually part of the final input discussion. So for the reading part, direct the students to pages 19 to 21 of their book, and it looks something like this. Okay, so again, your job as a teacher is to be able to guide the students on what to do on each of the drills over here. So if you take a look at the pages, page 19 covers something regarding multiple choice. Page 20 is true, false, not given, and 21 is another yes, no, not given activity. So guide them again on some basic rules. Now, in the case of the multiple choice items, emphasize to them that when they answer this kind of question, they have to follow the following steps. Number one, they have to read the question only. This is different in the case of the listening part, which where we require them, to read not only the question, but also the choices provided. However, that's important in listening because they need to be able to know what are the given answers and confirm from among those given answers what is the right answer. In the case of reading, however, we don't want them to preview the choices ahead. We only want them to read the questions only. Now, why do we need them to do that? Now, by just reading the question, they avoid getting overwhelmed by the many texts that they have provided. Now, sometimes in a given multiple choice question, they not only have like phrases, it's possible that they could have long sentences. So it would be too much for the students to be able to preview all of the choices provided. So instead of doing that, they just need to get the keywords to the questions. So read the question only and get keywords. And from there, they check the text or locate the text, locate in the text the keyword or words that they have chosen. Now again, this is a scheming activity, which means they just need to look for keywords. So for example, you can guide them in choosing the keywords here, and you might mention that you're looking for a why, a reason. People went to Gimbals. They might want to look for the word Gimbals first, which clearly is right over here in this part of the text. So the clue for number one is here. Now, you might want to do the same thing also for the rest of the items, but you first answer this together. So, for example, to illustrate the two-step approach here. So people went to Gimbals to buy a ballpoint pen because. So what was the reason why people went to Gimbals? So it's over here. So you read with them this part of the text. So you say, the day before, Gimbals had placed a full-page advertisement in the New York Times for a wonderful new invention, the ballpoint pen. The advertisement described the pen as fantastic and miraculous. Although they were expensive, $12.50 each, all 10,000 pens in stock were sold on the first day. So why did people go to Gimbals? 5,000 people jammed the entrance. Let's take a look at here. Is it they couldn't get them anywhere else? There's no mention of this, so it cannot be A. Letter B, they had been told how good the pens were. Possible, because there's a reference here about the pens being fantastic and miraculous. Letter C, they have never seen a ballpoint pen before. It might be a new invention, but there's nothing in this text here that says they have not seen it ever. And third, they thought the price was good. There's a mention of the price here, but it's expensive. Although even if it's expensive, it doesn't mean it is a good price. So therefore, from among the choices provided here, the likely answer is going to be letter B, because it has been described as fantastic and miraculous. So that's how it's gonna be like. Once they locate in the text the keywords and determine the answer, what they now do as step number 3 is to choose the best answer from among, and they can, from among the choices I mean, and they can do so by way of the elimination process. What we did earlier is we went item by item and decided whether it is the correct answer or not, and we did until we are left with only one good answer. So that's the illustration part. Now what you can ask them to do now is to answer numbers 2 to 5 themselves. If you wish, you can give it one more try. Number 2 over here. If you want some basis for the answers, the slides over here already provide you the clues to the answer. So just study this ahead of time. And once you're done with number 2, direct the students to numbers 3, 4, and 5 and let them answer this on their own by about 4 minutes maximum. So that's the first part. Now again, you flash the answers as they are given here in the slides. And once you're done with that, you move on to the next text. Now, emphasize also that just like in the multiple choice drills earlier, true, false, or yes, no, not given questions require the skimming method, and that just like in the previous drill also, they use keywords from the question and then look for them in the text. So for example, in number 1, it says the IELTS scores need to warm up before they are sent to scientists. So in this case, the keywords they have to use are IELTS scores and even the words warm up. And if they take a look at the text over here, they'll find IELTS scores mentioned over here. Again, direct them to the slides so that they will know where to look first. And then once you've given this clue, emphasized that since number 1 is found over here, then most definitely numbers 2 to 5 will be just underneath. So that's your guide. Again, let them choose keywords here, and then afterwards you give them about 5 minutes to answer this set. Okay, now over here on the slide, on the other hand, we have the whole text with the clues in highlights over here. So I have also added some explanation to the answers using the presenter notes, so just please refer to these notes for your reference. That's from numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Now, once this is done, you move on to topic number 3, which is another yes, no, not given drill. Just like in the previous activity, they skim and they simply look for keywords. Now in this case, you don't have to guide them already because they have already known how to do that. So you just let them be in this case and just instruct them to answer this set for 5 minutes maximum. While they're answering, you can probably move around. What I'd recommend is when you move around and check their work and it's within time still, you can tell them to check certain answers in their work. You don't have to let them know that this is this should be something else. Just let them know that they checked their number 2 because it's incorrect, or you let them know that their number 6 has to be reviewed further. That will let them know that that isn't the correct answer, and then they will review and then make the necessary corrections. So that's part of your job also as a teacher, so that you let them feel that you're really involved in their learning process. So once about 6 minutes is over for this set, then again you answer together. What you can do is ask a student to read a sentence and give their answers. If you find that the answers are wrong, you can ask them to point to the slide or to the text, the basis for the answer, and then confirm why that isn't the correct basis for the answer. So here again are the clues and the answers to the questions. So just refer to this, study this ahead of time so you know how to justify the answers. That's very important. As a teacher, you should be way ahead of your students when discussing the answers. So this, together with the listening activity you had earlier, should cover the first hour of the session. And after that, you are done with the first session, the first hour, and then you give the students some 10-minute break. Now for the writing part, there are actually 2 parts here. If you notice, in the first 15 minutes, there's going to be a short discussion about the second type of balanced argument essay. And basically what you do here is to just give them an overview of how this essay works, because essentially the outline is the same as the first kind of balanced argument essay that was discussed during day 6 of the session. Now, if you take a look at this part over here, you'll have an overview of how the board work is going to end up like. Now, just like in the previous discussion on balanced argument essays, this will be another no slide, all board work activity, and so I encourage you to study the process on how this is done. Now, your job is to first direct the students, to page 33 of their book, and that's because you would have to review them on how the previous balanced argument essay is going to look like. And by showing them this outline, they should have a good idea on how different the second type of balanced argument essay is going to be. So for that reason, you direct them to page 33 of their book, where they studied the first kind of balanced argument essay. Now, this is how the slides are going to be like. So first, you write on the board this label, the 3 essay types, and then of course they have learned so far the first 2, and that's the enumerative and the balanced argument essay. And then the third kind is the opinion, which they will be learning later today. Now, emphasize that there are 2 kinds of balanced argument essays. One kind is the one that they learned during day 6. That's type A. And basically what type A balanced argument essay is that they're given a so-called set of views, typically opposing. And if they can remember, these are marked by words like some people believe in this view while others believe in another kind of view. And their job in this essay is that they should be able to discuss both these views and present their own take on the issue. Now, once you've done this, again, you draw some rectangles like what you did in the previous occasion, but emphasize that this is a 4-paragraph essay. You might even want to ask them how many paragraphs there are. So if they say 4, you confirm and say that's right, and that they learned that the first paragraph is the introduction. You might want to ask them how many sentences there are, in an introduction, they should answer to and ask them what they are. So the first sentence is the so-called topic statement. The second is the opinion statement of the writer. So for example, if you have two views, for instance, then they might write somewhere here in the second sentence whether they believe in the first or the second view more strongly. Now from there, what they do in the second paragraph is present the views. But you might want to ask them which view should be discussed here. Now, since this is a balanced argument essay, the answer should be the view that the writer does not believe in. So for example, if the writer believes in view number 2, then second paragraph should be a discussion of the view for, or the first view in this case. Now, this is again developed using the TIE method, so you might want to ask them also what the TIE method is. So T is for topic sentence, I for ideas, and E for elaboration. Again, this is just a review. You can always direct them to page 33 so they are able to appreciate how this is like. Again, this is just a review. Now, after discussing the opposing view, they should be moving to the third paragraph where they should now be discussing their own view. Again, just like in paragraph 2, this is developed using the TIE method. And to cap off the essay, they simply come up with a summary statement, and typically this summary statement is a restatement of the opinion that has been written in the first paragraph of the essay. So this is how the first half of the board is going to look like. Now, you segue from here to discussing the second type of essay. For that, you direct them to page 35. That's over here. Sorry. Let me present it over here. Page 35. Let me just highlight that here. Okay. And from there, you now I have to redo out all the points again. You now have to discuss the outline yourself. Now, while this is building up, you again follow the same activity that we did during the first balanced argument essay discussion, and that is because the output later, especially for the opinion essay, will be done in a similar fashion as the first outline that they learned. However, for this discussion, you just need to guide them on how the outline works, because essentially type B is just the same as type A. The only difference though is that emphasize that in a type B balanced argument essay, what they are given is not some views, but rather a reality, some phenomenon or fact of life. And what they do with this given phenomenon is they have to evaluate whether it's more of a positive or a negative thing. Now, in most instances, the question will ask them to determine whether this is more advantageous or disadvantageous. Now, direct them to the example that's found on page 35. So for every part of the slide that you flash or that you write on the board here, I'd like you to always direct them to the example. So we always provide a model. That's the manner in which this should be shared with the students. So after they appreciate the question, the example question, you now move on to the paragraphs yourself. So you ask them how many paragraphs they find. They'll say 4. So if that is the case, they now move on to the first paragraph in which they write the introduction. Now, let one student read an introduction and emphasize that just like in type A, that also has 2 parts, both the topic and the opinion statements. Emphasize also the similarity in which the statements are introduced. In the second sentence, for example, they write, still in this essay, I shall explain why. Now, in this case, they would have to emphasize whether it's more advantageous or disadvantageous, so whatever is their view should be explicitly quoted in the first paragraph. Now, once you're done with that, you move on to paragraph 2, where you now discuss the more important bits of the essay. Now, just like in the previous example, what they do emphasize here that in paragraph 2 is a discussion of the view that they don't believe in. So since in the first paragraph the writer emphasized that they should it is actually more of a um, negative thing, then therefore the advantages of that phenomenon is discussed here. Now, notice also that in this case, we follow again the tie method. So you might want to ask a student to read the first half of the second paragraph, and then the other half can be read by another. So again, your job here is to direct them to the T part, the I part, and the E parts of the paragraph to again emphasize the tie method. Now, once they're done, they now discuss the disadvantages. So, since the writer believes that it's more disadvantageous, then those negatives are discussed there. Now, just like in paragraph 2, again, another tie method. Now, again, you ask them to read the paragraph by themselves, this time silently, or if you wish, you could do it again, one student at a time, one half, one student, another half, another student, so it can be more interactive. It is all up to you. Now, emphasize again which are the T, the I, and the E, so you reinforce the tie methodology. Now, emphasize, before you move on to the summary paragraph here, that whenever they have type B, balanced argument essay, the order of the ideas can be reversed. So for example, if they find that the situation is more advantageous, then naturally what they write in paragraph 2 would first be the disadvantages, and in the third, the advantages. Now, this is basically these arrows over here. You could write this to emphasize that it can be in either order depending on their point of view. As long as they write in paragraph 3 their view, they should be okay. All right, so that's how the outline is going to work. Now, after the students read paragraph 3, you direct them to paragraph 4, which now emphasizes the same method that they learned in the first essay type. So basically, the summary here is a restatement of the opinion that had been written over here in the first paragraph. So that's how this part of the discussion is gonna be like, and you can direct them to page 36 for another example of a question, and encourage the students to practice writing for this particular essay topic, and that perhaps in the future, if some individual consultations are feasible, then maybe they could have this essay work checked by you, and that can be a basis for a future meeting if you wish. So that's the first part. Okay, now that's about 15 minutes altogether, this slide over here. So this is how the board is going to end up eventually. Now you would have, however, to erase this part of the book, because eventually you would have to discuss the main topic for the day, and that's the opinion essay that is actually found on page 31 of their book. So direct the students to that part over here, and again, let's do some board work. Here is an example of how the board work for opinion essays are going to look like at the end of the discussion, right? And again, let me go point by point how these points progress from start to finish. So again, the point or the basis for the discussion is on page 31 and 32 of the book. Let's take a look at how this goes. So you clear off the board and then write the opinion essay at the top. Now, direct them to the sample topic that's found on page 31. And from there, they should be able to find that in an opinion essay, what they are given is an opinion or a suggestion. Just like what they have there, the suggestion or the opinion is that all government health or all healthcare and education needs should be shouldered I mean, by the government. So that's the opinion, and their job is to agree or disagree. Now, emphasize that just like in the last three essays that they have learned, or the three kinds of essays they have learned, this also has a 4-paragraph outline. So paragraph 1 is introduction, paragraphs 2, 3 will be the body, and paragraph 4 the summary. So you draw this on the board. Now, direct them to paragraph 1, and then you can ask again a student to read the sample, or you can do it yourself, and then emphasize that just like in the previous essays, this too has a 2-step process. So the first half is a topic statement, and the second half is the opinion statement. Now, direct the students to the expressions that are used, or the expression that is used in the first paragraph. So for instance, they might find that in the first sentence, they find the words, "it has been said that," but you can also recommend a few more expressions if you like. So you can write all of these items on the board to emphasize that since an opinion or a suggestion has been given, these expressions come in handy. All right. So basically, they use any of these phrases to start their first sentence, and then at the end of each of these sentences, they add the paraphrase to the opinion or suggestion given in the text. Now, the same goes also in their second sentence. Notice that that also ends, or starts, I mean, with the words "in this essay." But emphasize that since this is an opinion essay, what they have to present here in the last part would be to emphasize whether they agree or disagree with the topic. All right, so that's how it's going to be. Now, from there, you direct them to page 32 and give the topic a try. And then afterwards, you give them about 5 to 10 minutes. If you wish, you can engage in some discussion with them about what paraphrases they could use in lieu of the words there. So for example, in page 32, the topic is all about homework being lessened. So maybe you could think about other words for children, the word lessened, for example. Emphasize also that they don't need to change all of the words, like homework, for example. They might not be able to think about a synonym for homework, so they can just leave the word homework as is, but make an effort to paraphrase the others. All right, so give them about 5 to 7 minutes to create their introduction, and from there, you move on to paragraphs 2 and 3. Now, in paragraph 2, we have the first arguments presented. Now, emphasize here that what they do in paragraph 2 is present the so-called concession. Now, a concession is basically the view that they don't believe in. So if this were, say, a balanced argument essay, this would be the opposing idea, all right? And they need to do this because what they do eventually in paragraph 3 is tell the reader that even if some people believe in this idea, they still agree or disagree. So therefore, by writing the concession, the candidate is able to present a more wholesome argumentation considering the other point of view, and that despite this point of view, they still agree or disagree with whatever statement is provided. Now, emphasize also that just like in the previous 3 essay types, they also have to present the tie method. Now, from there, they think about what arguments they could use to support the view that they don't believe in, and then once they're done with that, they move on to discussing their own point of view. Now, you can stop here on the board work and direct the students to the sample in the book itself. Now, ask again some students to read the concession paragraph and then emphasize that that paragraph is to discuss what the suggestion believes in, that all government, all healthcare and education needs should be shouldered by the government. Now, emphasize that in paragraph 3, it is not the writer's view, and so he presents that he does not believe in it for some reason. And then again, you ask somebody to read the paragraph. Now, this should give them an idea now what the body of an opinion essay is going to look like, and so you direct them again to page 32 and ask them to brainstorm for ideas in support or to disagree with the opinion provided. Now, in this part, I'd like you again to engage in some discussion with the students. So you might want to write this T diagram over here. On the left, you write why agree, that all, well, that homework should be lessened, or why disagree, that homework should still remain as is. Now, I have here some suggested ideas that you might want to study beforehand, but in the end, I'd like you, teacher, to carry over the ideas that the students present themselves. We'd like them to feel some sense of ownership when they develop their paragraphs thereafter. But just in case they're unable to produce some ideas, you can volunteer all or some of the ideas on this slide. Now, I'd like you to follow the pattern in which these ideas and elaboration statements are provided. Notice the two color presentation here. I'd like to emphasize this kind because we would like them to be able to indicate that whenever they have an idea, they should think about a corresponding elaboration. So that's important. So that before they write their essay, they already have an idea how the essay is going to start and end. So this is important so that in their planning process, they're able to prepare for ideas already. Okay? So the discussion should last for about 10 minutes maximum. Then afterwards, you now direct the students to the blank spaces in the middle of page 32 and create their own paragraphs. Now, emphasize that for those who say they agree, should be able to write the ideas under disagree here in paragraph 2, and that the ones here on the left should be written in paragraph 3. Now, if it's the other way around, they just simply reverse the order of the paragraphs. So if they, for example, agree or disagree, I mean, then they discuss those ideas under agree in paragraph 2 and those under disagree in paragraph 3. All right, so that's about 20 minutes. Give them about 10 minutes each paragraph, so they should be able to write for both paragraphs for 20 minutes in total. Now, if they're having a hard time, guide them, give them maximum 25 minutes. You can push the time if you still have time. And then from there, you let some model paragraphs be read in class. So, of course, as the students write, you also comment on their work. You move around the room, correct their grammar if need be, and present some suggestions if you want, not only in terms of ideas but also manners in which these ideas are going to be presented, so that they are also guided on how to polish up their sentences. Okay, so after about 20 to 25 minutes of writing, direct them to the final paragraph, which is basically a restatement of the writer's view. Now, emphasize that the summary is going to be very easy to develop because prior to paragraph 4, they shall have built a very good case already in support of their view. And so direct them to the sample. You might want to read this yourself, and then in the last 5 minutes of their time, ask them to complete their essay by writing the summary paragraph. Okay? So this is how the process is going to be, note that this part of the discussion should last for about an hour and 15 minutes. That's about 75 minutes altogether. And then after you finish up the essay part, provided you still have time, and I recommend you do spare some time for the speaking part between 8:40 and 9, I'd like you to open up the class for some discussion about some questions that they might find difficult to respond to. Now, ideally, they should have a copy of the September compilation. Emphasize that they're doing this because this should prepare them for their mock test 2, in which they will be using the September compilation. So I'd like you to tell the class that they have to preview the questions ahead of time. And ideally, they should have been told about this on day 6. I can recall I wrote a note of that here on day 6. So hopefully this was given to them, this instruction was given to them last week, ideally. But if they did, if in case you didn't, it's just okay, because eventually you also have to prepare yourself for some questions that you think are difficult for students to answer. So for a 20-minute discussion, you might want to just focus on part 3 questions if you like. Choose about 5 questions for each part here, maybe 5 in your part 3, or if you like, if the part 1 topics are relatively easy, you can just choose like 2 topics that are a little challenging for students to answer, and then the same goes also for part 2. You recommend scenarios or possible stories that they could share in response to those part 2 topics. Now, that should basically cover everything for day 7, and let them know that day 8 will be another final input activity, and that they will be covering again some discussions for all the 4 subtests of the IELTS. And that should basically conclude your lecture on day 7.